gargantuan sets.
I learned early on nobody quite understood what scope, what scale of the movie we were talking here.
Harsh locations.
Everybody was drinking an average of 5 gallons of water a day.
Otherworldly creatures.
There was moments where you felt a bit like you were somewhere else.
And ambitious special effects sequences.
I was so scared that I don't think I heard what anybody said was the vision of the movie.
Roland Emmerich's Stargate took audiences to a planet far beyond the end of our own galaxy. But to create this world at a time when special effects were still new, its talented designers would have to take risks, be daring, and try things they would have never thought possible. Designing the Stargate itself would be the very first task for the movie's design team.
In the very first versions that we had, in the first ideas, the Stargate was a pyramidal shape, a triangular shape that was standing on its tip. But then Roland came up with the idea that he would need some kind of dialing process. So that's when the gate became a circular shape.
A very complicated aspect of the Stargate was after we established and came to the point that we needed an inner ring that would move and the outer ring would stay in place. Turned out to be a pretty complicated technical piece of equipment.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Don't look at the beam. Don't die.
Don't look directly in it or let this thing hit your eye.
Director Roland Emmerich wanted the Stargate to come to life using materials that were real and organic. And so, the special effects team started experimenting with water in a large tank.
The kerthudge is when the Stargate erupts into the room. And what we ended up doing is we ended up getting an air cannon and mounting it literally an inch above the surface of the water and fired off our air cannon. And the first time we did it, we fired off with 120 pounds of air pressure, which lifted the entire volume of water out as a unit, moved over and landed on my DP's head, Dave's stump, which was my favorite moment of the film. We stirred it up and came up with what's called the strudel, which was water spinning. If you shoot water, you shoot the underside. This is a perfect mirror. And so I showed him how we could dunk people into it. We shot some tests. And when we turned it up like this, it became magical.
And so to pass through the gate, James Spader was asked to dip his face into the tank.
Then I said, okay, here, don't let Roland see me talking to you, but here's the deal. You got to do this, and we're shooting it backwards. You know, we'll stick your face in the water, we'll wave away all the air bubbles, and then when I knock on the tank, open your eyes and act backwards, and then pull your head out. And he was great.
The sand dunes of Yuma, Arizona provided the perfect location for the planet Abydos. But shooting in Yuma had to take place during the scorching summer months to avoid the crowded dune buggy season.
You were drinking, everybody was drinking an average of 5 gallons of water a day and never going to the bathroom. It was sweat. You would drink water and sweat it out.
I asked somebody, I said, gee, it's pretty warm today. He said, yeah, it's 126. In all honesty, it was very, very tough on the crew because they were hauling equipment around those dunes and they were hauling them long distances and stuff.
Sand everywhere. On equipment, in equipment. Transportation is a virtual impossibility.
The sand dunes needed to appear totally pristine for shooting. But just one take could cover a dune with footprints.
You know, we had innumerable problems of getting rid of footprints, and we tried everything that you can think of. We had Ritter fans out there to blow the sand smooth. Well, that didn't work, so we brought in jet airplane engines on the backs of trucks. That didn't work. We brought in helicopters and had them hover, and that didn't work.
And so, a team of 30 sand sweepers were enlisted to sweep away the footprints after each shot.
And the same guys would strap giant water jugs on their back, and they'd wander around filling you up because people were dropping like flies. And these guys, like, they saved our lives out there.
One of the first sets to be built in Yuma was the entrance to Ra's pyramid.
Everybody was talking about, okay, a set. And everybody's used to normal, more or less normal size sets. Now, we were really not normal in terms of size.
And that was a huge set. It was 90 feet by, it had a 125-foot ramp coming off of it, and it was 100 and some odd feet wide and 90 feet high. And that was built right into a very high 400 to 500-foot dune.
They started working like at 2 in the morning, and because they basically had to stop at 11 in the morning, it was so hot, you couldn't touch the steel. And I remember flying down to Yuma when construction had started and wondering, what are we doing here? You know?
The work of Olga was stunning. I mean, if the set didn't have to stop somewhere, you would have bought it as a real thing. It was so well done.
It wasn't just the actors who would have to contend with the harsh desert heat. Abydos would have its animal inhabitants as well.
The mass stage concept came, of course, from the script, Ron's idea. He wanted some kind of very big, airy creature. He had to look docile, not aggressive, very much like a cow or something like this. But we thought like big, airy creature would be cooler to look at.
The Mastich costume was built on a large plastic frame that rested on a Shire horse's back.
The most challenging thing for me in the movie was dressing the horse every day. Because I was part of the team, about 5 of us, we had a big truck with a crane to just bring down onto the horse the suits. The horse were wearing those pants like with hair on. And you know, after a while the horse sweats, and they sweat a lot in the desert. And those suits were becoming really, really tough to handle.
The horses were unable to gallop across the dunes in their massive costumes. So a miniature Mastich costume was made for a dog. And instead of an actor, the dog would drag a puppet.
This is one of the puppets that was actually used for the dragging sequence with the dog. So every limb is loose. It's quite heavy, so when you interact with the sand, there's impact on the sand. That was a little hard for the dog to drag this thing, and that's actually the same one you see going over your head on that shot where you see the master jumping and this thing landing, crashing. That's not James Spader, that's this.
The second enormous set to be constructed in Yuma was the lost city of Nagata.
That was 6 very large buildings, the 2 front buildings being, I think, 80 or 90 feet high. And then because it was built on a hillside, the buildings going back were shorter and shorter.
My favorite set of all is Nagata City. Walking in there, you couldn't believe how real this stuff looked. It was stunning. There was a moment where you felt a bit like you were somewhere else.
The establishing shots of Nagata were filmed using a model of the city.
So the building of the city of Nagata was a bunch of little miniatures photographed in the real light, in the real desert, multiplied out. After the movie came out, we got a lot of phone calls from people going, "Where's that city? Because we want to shoot there."
The miniatures were also used to shoot the sandstorm, which was done with a special kind of dusty clay called Fuller's Earth.
It just made a whole heck of a lot more sense to take our models and set them up and then blow Fuller's Earth at it and see what we get. Because in a worst case scenario, if it's no good, I can enhance it a lot easier than create it from scratch.
The peace of Nagata is disturbed by the arrival of Ra's spaceship. Production designer Holger Gross conceived its unique pyramid design.
One of the first meetings we had, we said, "So what's landing on a pyramid?" We said, "Maybe a pyramid." So, and based upon that loose kind of a spin, I went home and started scribbling around shapes and so on. And the spacecraft itself became a pyramid.
But when the crew attempted to shoot the ship landing on the pyramid, they ran into problems.
We had a lot of problems with the mechanics of this spaceship because we're working in Fuller's Earth, and Fuller's Earth is little tiny, horrible, nasty dirt. It gets into everything and it stops everything from moving. So at a certain point, this thing became a CGI thing. And I said to Roland, I could just shoot me this and this and I will do everything in between. And they went, "Oh yeah, it better look good or you're in big trouble." After it's landed, the sun's rising and there's 3 moons and everything looks great. And then suddenly the thing starts sliding open and panels come down and it intercuts with oddly enough, another miniature set from the interior where you see lights starting to open, which was a brilliant miniature. I've never seen one as good as that.
Ra's henchmen, Anubis and Horus, were based upon ancient Egyptian deities. Horus was god of the sky, Anubis was god of the dead.
Basically, this whole helmet rests on the shoulder of the actor. There's a bearing here. The head of the actor actually activates the turn left and right. Everything else is radio controlled. This is a typical remote control we're using for the mask. Now, you have a few functions in there. You have the basic head movement. Then the wings are moving separately. It's a little noisy. You don't hear this at the end. So you look at the iris, changing shape. Works at the same time and this works. This basically, the ears are like a way to create reaction on those guys. You don't see their face, there's no expression. If the guy turns around and then, they're catching some noise.
Action on masks.
The gliders, flown by Ra's soldiers, may have looked simple, but coming up with their design took some time.
Roland had a plan about the gliders, and he wanted them to look like blocky locomotives because it's so antithetical to something that flies. And he liked the contradiction. And we shot a lot of tests, and we did some CG tests for him because he had to prove this to the studio.
But executive producer Mario Casar did not approve of the design.
Mario looked at it and went, "This doesn't fly. This is like an anvil. Anvils don't fly."
The final design was discovered by chance.
I designed this to be actual Ross belt buckle. And I brought this to a meeting for Roland Emmerich to approve. He looked at it and he said, "Gosh, that looks cool. Maybe we should use this as our gliders." Wow.
The final design was born.
We used gliders that were, I think, a little over 3 feet in wingspan. It was pretty exciting stuff to see, especially when they flew out of control and crashed.
Toxoid.
For the film's massive interior sets, the production moved into the famous Spruce Goose building in Long Beach, California.
I went up to a catwalk that goes in 50 feet off the ground floor, all the way around the dome. That's when the first time it actually really hit me. Holy macaroni, this is a lot of stuff. And when you saw these huge columns, like, you know, the columns standing in Ra's throne room, it was pretty impressive. It was quite impressive.
The design team covered all the walls with specially designed hieroglyphics. The set for Ra's throne room had delicate floors, so cast and crew wore special booties to protect it from scratches. This gave way to the Friday evening Decorate Your Booty party. When it came to designing Ra's magnificent mask, Patrick Tatopoulos again turned to Egyptian history for inspiration.
The king called Amenhotep was having physical problems and deformation on his face, and this feature was astonishing to me. His face looked like it was very straightforward. I mean, very, very elegant in some ways. That was my first inspiration. When I saw that picture, I said, this is the coolest thing. Something interesting about the helmet is the amount of detail we had to create for it. And I think that's what gives the richness of the movie. I think this really pleased Roland because Roland decided to use that helmet as a title sequence for the movie.
The final battle sequence would require the 1,200 extras dressed in heavy robes to charge over the dunes in the harsh Arizona heat.
We had the problem of, attrition. People would show up one day and then not come back the next day because they were out there in, all those robes and stuff and running around in the desert roasting.
To reduce the number of shots requiring extras, the design team tried using a tabletop desert set to shoot an army of tiny models. The footage was not used. For some shots, you need the real thing. In an early cut of the film's finale, Ra's spaceship explodes, but Ra himself is not seen.
We tested the movie, and the audience didn't feel very satisfied. And the bottom line is people wanted to see Ra suffer.
What you're seeing here is like the final stage of Ra, when he regresses as an alien at the end of the movie. There was teeth added to that, he was obviously painted, and radio control and puppeteered as well.
He cast it into this paper mache stuff that if we hit with an air cannon blows away into little pieces like he's being disintegrated. We went out, we shot it overnight.
Stargate will be remembered by audiences as a magnificent sci-fi epic. But for those who worked on the film, it was a moment when they got to try things that had never been done before.
Stargate is always like in my mind. It was just wonderful.
And there was a respect, and when there's respect, everybody tries to work together.
Holger Gross is an unsung, genius hero of this movie. He and Patrick Totopoulos and Kit West did phenomenal things for no money and in no time, and they were ever creative. And Roland, of course, gets all the credit, because without Roland, we'd all be sitting around going, so what do you want to do?